Hi there, Chris here with another fresh tip for you all. In this video we are going to take a look at painting obsidian flesh. To serve as our example, we are going to paint this Wilderkin model from the Relicblade game. And he's already been primed using gray sear, and I initially was going to basically show this in a contrast method, but I figured I'll just use normal opaque colors for all this. Screamer Pink and some Lamian Medium is what we're going to get started with here, and this is just going to simply be a base coat on the entirety of the flesh. The medium isn't 100% necessary, but I just like using it as it thins the color down in a nice consistency, and you pretty much can get a similar consistency with water, but I often just use medium because, it flows nicely, and, nothing funny happens when you oversaturate the paint with water and, kind of bubbles up and what have yous, right? So I just like using medium. It's not entirely necessary. You can use water just to apply this base coat, but of course you can see some of the primer does show through, so we will apply a second coat to get a nice, smooth, even coverage onto the model. And again, we're going for an obsidian look. We're going to use Cyan Purple here. This is a contrast color. We're going to use a bit of contrast medium. We're going to do this in roughly a 1-to-1 mix ratio. 1 part of medium and 1 part of the contrast paint. I'm going to use a brush for applying the paint and another brush that is clean to basically feather out the contrast. So I use one brush, and then I use this other brush. This is a larger base coating brush, I believe, from Citadel. And because it's clean and it's slightly damp, I basically just create a nice little feathering on the model. Now, again, you don't really have to use the contrast medium to thin the color. You could apply it right out of the bottle onto the surface, but I wasn't really looking for a heavy saturation over the surface of the muscles and everything like that. Now, I'm going for an obsidian look on this model, so I had tried this initially with just pure blacks and going kind of grayscale, and it was really kind of boring and I wasn't happy with it, and so I decided to go with this more magenta purple kind of look, hence the Screamer Pink and Cyan Purple. And really what we're going for here, and what we're going to do over the entirety of this model, all over these muscle groups, is we are basically going to do this kind of like how we do gemstones, where basically the color gets deeper at the high points and it gets brighter down to the lower sections. And I'm treating each of the little sections of the model kind of like I would basically be kind of like a gemstone. Now, this is a regular shape. Usually gemstones are round or what have you, but here you can see on these muscle groups, so like on the pectorals, I treat each pectoral like it's a gemstone, and each of the little sections, the shoulder muscles, I treat like they're one gemstone. The biceps and triceps I treat as one, the forearms, etc., etc. So I go around each section treating it like its own little gemstone-like effect. And on the back, you can see there's all these little segments all over the place. And again, I just treat each one like they are a gemstone. Now, the way I'm going about this is that I've started off with the mid-tone, and I'm pushing the shadows and creating the darker points on the area. Now here on the face, I basically apply it over the entirety of the face and then wipe it away, but I'm kind of concentrating my brush stroke to one side of the face because I want to I don't want to have it too symmetrical because it just would look a little weird. So I pull a lot of the color away from the jaw, tip of the nose, and the cheekbones and everything like that, and allowing just a little bit brighter colors to remain there. Next, we're going to come in with some Black Templar, and I'm throwing this onto the palette and using just really the dampness of the brush to thin the color out a little bit. And basically, we're going to just create some really dark, deep points onto the area. And anywhere where I want to push the shadows just a little darker, I thin the color out a little bit. And because we're kind of using a glazing technique, I will push that color up towards where I want it to build up. And that is very consistent with when we're glazing miniatures. And I'm just basically using that same technique as I'm creating darker points. And these are like basically where the areas are closest to the light. And you can see already as we're working our way through, it already has that kind of look that we're getting with a gemstone, where you have the darker color up at the top and then it gets brighter towards the bottom. And as you can imagine, that's how we're going to go about the entirety of creating this effect on the model. Now, it gets a little tricky on areas like the face and sometimes like the abs, or the abs, the forearm, everything like that. But otherwise, as long as you kind of just treat each area as their own little thing, treat each muscle as its own kind of gemstone look, you should be able to pull this off on whatever miniature you're doing, especially if you want to employ this on, another kind of fantasy model or stone golem or, you know, whatever you want to do. But that is really it. And again, like I said, I started off with the mid-tone and I'm creating the deeper tones as I work my way through. So you can see here on the face, I'm using the black, pushing it up towards the high point to the hairline. In the eye sockets, I'm just building up to the high points on there, and then under the nose I'll do it, and just below the cheeks I keep some brighter color on the cheekbones themselves. The nose, I'm pushing it towards the brow, everything like that. And again, I just kind of go through and reestablish some darker tones anywhere that I might have missed or just wasn't quite where I wanted it. And of course, you can push this effect and creating these slight gradients. I did this pretty quickly, but again, you can do this, you know, take any amount of length of time that you need to do it. Huge thank you to all my patrons. Without their support, these videos would not be possible. If you're considering Patreon support, click the link in the description below. There are varying tiers to support at, and a huge thank you to everybody who currently supports. Take care of those brushes, and they will take care of you.